Hey you guys, today we're going to be talking about how to make a little sled. You can hang this on the door, set it out on your front porch, just a little Christmas decoration. We've been going through making a few different things. We made the reindeer, snowman on a lathe, Christmas tree, and a couple of these little three-piece turnings. Now, I haven't had any plans that I've put together for these. For this one I actually did, so I'm going to have a link to the PDF file down in the description if you guys want to watch that. Now, for this part, all you're going to need is one 1x4 10-foot long. That's it. You don't necessarily need a bandsaw. You could use a jigsaw. You could use a scroll saw. You could use a coping saw if you had to. This is not very complicated. All we're going to use is the one 1x4 10-foot long. We're going to use some black paint, some red paint, and then some kind of very dark brownish. And again, you can choose whatever colors you want. It doesn't really matter. The templates, I drew out by hand and I drew them up in CAD. I saved them as a PDF and I had them added back in. So, I went ahead off camera and cut some of these out. They're all going to be exactly the same. We have some of the slats already cut. So, templates, and I did plane all the slats, everything in red, I planed down to a 1/2 inch thick. You don't have to. I did, I just think it looks proportionally a little bit better. If you don't have a planer, don't worry about it. Don't plane it down. So we have the slats for the top, the two supports underneath, and the front board already cut out. Now, you didn't need to watch me do all this, so what you are going to be able to watch is me cut out the bottom two slides. So all I did for that, grab two boards. The boards have to be at least 24 inches long, at least 3 inches wide. I traced my pattern on the top board. Then I went through, you can use hot glue, you can use a little dab of wood glue, you can use super glue. I used some nails and just put a few tacks out here in the area I'm going to cut off. And then I did include two in the area that I'm not going to cut off. So once again, these patterns, I drew them up. There's a PDF down in the description you can have for free. All right, so what I'll do, I like to cut these both out at once so they're exactly the same size. So we're going to use the bandsaw. Again, you can use whatever you want, whatever you have available. Coping saw, if you had to, cut them out one at a time with a coping saw. It doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead. We'll turn this thing on and get started. All right, make sure we have our fence adjusted. Keep your fence pretty close to the top of the surface. So the first thing I'll do, I'll probably try to cut the tip, this curve. I'm not sure if you can see the pattern, but there's a curve right here for the front of the sled. And then I'll cut the back, and then I'll work my way back in the middle. Okay. Cut the back off. Now I have to cut out a few areas here and here for the slats to go across. I'm going to cut those out later, so I'll make the straight cut and then come back and cut these out. Now these don't have to be exactly perfect because we're trying to make this sled look old, but what I do want to do is make sure that we're not too far off. So these bottom lines are a little crooked. Marking gauge, and we'll just kind of straighten them up a little bit. Now this was too long, it was hitting the column, so I had to draw the mark on the back, scribe it in the back, and we'll go ahead and cut it from this side. All right, so we're gonna go ahead, we'll pull these apart, and we'll go ahead and sand these up a little bit and chamfer the edges. So I'll meet you guys over at the router table. All right, so we went ahead and pried these apart. We touched them up a little bit with a sander, and we pulled our nails out. So we've got a chamfer bit in here, and I set the chamfer bit so that the bearing is pretty much right in the middle. It doesn't particularly matter the size, but we're gonna go around this whole thing, each side. The only part we're going to exclude are these little squares here where our supports are going to go across. So let's go ahead and get started. Forgot to plug it in. All right. Now, in case you guys are wondering, I always try to start off with end grain. I always try to anticipate which way a chip out would happen, so that if you can come back and clean up that side, you can. All right, there we go. All right, so all these pieces are ready. We did the exact same thing with all of these. We went through, we traced our pattern, we cut it out in the bandsaw, and we routed them. We used the chamfer bit on the edges of these slats, and I used a small 1/4 inch or 3/16, I don't remember which, round over on all the edges of these. Now, I'm not too worried about, is everything sanded 100%? I'm not too worried about if everything looks great. I'm not too worried about router marks, because on this particular project, we want to make it look rough. So you can see how we go through on the sides. We might even add a few more little dents and dings here and scrape the edges and sand them a little bit, as we did here, to make it look a little more rustic and old. So we'll go get the DA sander. We're going to do that before we put our coat of black paint on everything. Again, each side, everything gets a coat of black paint. That's the base coat we're going to do on here. So, if you have a random orbital sander like this, go ahead and use this. Go over the whole thing, hit a little of the edges, right on the edge a little bit here and there, totally random, all over, make it look worn, okay? So I'll go through and do this. Again, we want to have that used look. So spend a little time sanding it. Doesn't have to be a lot. Don't be too worried about consistency. In fact, you want the opposite of consistency. So I'm going to go through, do that, and then I'll catch up with you guys when I'm done. All right, guys, so we got these all sanded down. And if you don't have a random orbital sander, don't even worry about it. Grab a block of wood, wrap some sandpaper around it, just flatten out the edges here and there, smooth out any really sharp edges. Just make it look worn. Make it look like it's been around for a while. That's all you really have to do. So what we're starting to do here is we're applying our black paint, our base coat. So black on one side, wait for it to dry, flip it over, black on the other, make sure you get everything totally black. And the next day we'll come back, we will use this kind of grayish brown color for the runners, and then we'll put the barn red on the top slats, we'll nail it together. So I'll bring you guys back after we get some more painting done. All right, you guys, we're back at the little sled. It's the next day. So what we've done, we had painted each side of these black, and then I lightly sanded it with 220 just to smooth it out. I went ahead, once that was done, we painted each side of all the slats red, and each side of the runners and supports kind of this dark brownish gray. I don't know what color this is. I got it off a clearance rack at Menards. So just a barn red and then a grayish brown. Now at this point we have our two coats, we have the edges roughed up, so all I've done on some of these already, and I've left some that I can do for you, is just went over the edges a little bit, okay, with some sandpaper. Okay, wherever I roughed it up before with the DA sander or with the random orbital sander, we're just going to go over the edges. It looks nice and clean right now. Okay, and we'll just take it on the edge. I try not to do the surface too much. You don't really have to, unless if you did age that or abuse it a little. I just sand a little here and there, just wherever. We're not going for any particular pattern, but you can see it'll eat through to the wood and some of the black paint. Just to kind of give it that aged look. Okay, this piece here, you can kind of see which side looks the best, which side you want to be the top. Pay a little more attention to that side. All right, maybe we'll hit this a little bit more. Front and back. Missed it a little bit. There we go. The only one we have left, I think, is one of the runners here. All right, so the runners, I'm going to really focus on where I can see the most. Up here in the front. Back a little bit. The bottom just a little. All right. I think that's probably pretty good. And the other ones I had already finished. So let's go ahead and we will pin this thing together. Grab a little bit of glue. I don't know what's needed.